My life has changed a lot in the last year, even in just terms of like, I don't have a lot of, like, my privacy has gone from like, 4 years ago, my whole life was private and I didn't have people around much at all, to like, I have very little privacy. And so it's like, what's the price of success? It's like, privacy is a luxury now. And so that is something that I was scared of. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to even go on social media simply because of that alone. What's up, guys? So in this video, we are going to have Shai, my new creative director, interview me. We have questions on business, we've got questions on personal, and then we go into like philosophy. So we're gonna go all over the place with this interview today. And here's the thing, if you guys like it, then we're gonna make it to a series of basically my teammates interviewing me on different topics. If you guys hate it, we're never doing it again. Let me know.
So, Layla, I started like a few weeks ago as your creative director. And one thing that I definitely noticed is the company culture is so embedded within everything that I've seen here. Not only like being within the company, but also the entire interview process. A, how deliberate was that? To like have the focus on that versus everything else? And B, like how do you even come to those core values that you have?
Super deliberate, because I would say that the first few books that I read and like influences on me were about culture and how important it was to scaling a company. And so one of the first places that I felt like I understood that that would protect us in a way is in the hiring process. Because if you think about it, how do you create culture? Culture is shared values, right? Or I would say like an unspoken set of behaviors or behavioral norms that people adhere to. And so how do you create those, right? Well, it's a lot easier to hire for them than it is to create them from scratch. Because if you think about a value or like honesty or kindness, that is a lot harder to teach than how to clean the floors, how to film a video, how to do customer success. And so my idea was like, okay, well then it probably makes more sense to hire people for values and then determine what we can and can't train for. And so the first thing that I did was put in place a culture interview, where basically one interview is dedicated just to ensuring that this person has the base level set of behavioral norms that we all share in the company. And that paid dividends as we scaled, because having a culture that was so strong, what it really is it's the, I don't want to say emotional skills, but it's the skills that are harder to teach. Like, it is harder to teach somebody to be honest than it is to teach somebody to film a video, in my opinion. It's hard to teach somebody to be kind, to have a sense of humor, to be competitively great than it is to teach somebody how to run a company meeting. And so it makes sense to me that you would hire for those things. And that's why it's so embedded in the interview process is, one, I want to make it very clear to the person that's being hired how important it is to us. And I want it to be crystal clear so that if on their end, they're like, I don't fuck with this, then they can be like, you know what, I opt out. This is not what I'm all about. And I've had that before, because if somebody gets like coming from a super corporate company and then they come to the interview process, like, what is all this hokey dokey bullshit around culture, right? Or if they're just like, I just want a 9-to-5 job and that's it. And like, this is all nice, but this sounds like intense, right? Yeah. I want that intensity to scare people away. So in a way, it attracts the right people and it repels the wrong people, which is ideally what the interview process should do. In my opinion, they should be ruling themselves out just as much as we're ruling them out. But if we don't give enough of that, and if we're not potent enough in how we represent ourselves, then that doesn't happen. So I've only tried to continue to expand how prevalent that is in the interview process. I think that we're good at it. I wouldn't say that we're like where I want to be, because I've studied some of the companies that have just insane ones. And I think now we have building, we can do some even cooler stuff. But I do feel like we do a really good job compared to most there. In terms of picking the core values, that was something that when we started acquisition.com, really it starts with, where do we want to take this company, right? And then in order to take this company there, what kind of people do we have to get there? What kind of person do I have to be? What kind of person does Alex have to be? What kind of people have to work with us? And so I looked at Gym Launch, our first company, for example, and thought to myself, what type of people help that company succeed, right? And it was a different type of company. So we had different values. Now, do I not resonate with those values anymore? No, you will actually see similarities. So like Gym Launch, we had a value called grow or die. Here we have competitive greatness. You see how it's almost the same essence, but it's a different style, right? It's just like you might see how I dress versus how Caleb dresses versus how Yasmin dresses. It's like it's the same essence, but different styles. I didn't leave everything over there, but I did realize, like, where did we miss? Why is it that that company, maybe the culture couldn't take us to a billion or 10 billion, whereas this company, the culture could? There was two things that came to mind immediately, which was one, people I want to associate with on and off the field. So people that I don't just want to work with, but I'm proud to say from a personal standpoint, I'm associated with. Because I think if we're going to be in the public eye, then anybody who works with us is automatically in the public eye as well. And so I have to feel like I can associate with them on and off the field. In my last company, for example, I had this guy who'd be getting so drunk on weekends that, he like ruined a hotel and everyone knew because like he like tore a door down and like this whole thing, right? But like he was just kind of behind the scenes. And so it was like, it didn't really affect the company. Here, I don't think that we have wiggle room for things like that. Another example of something that came to mind was just there's no room for anybody who's not continuously trying to grow. Because I really thought about it and I was like, if even 20% of the company is not trying to improve, when you have a company that's going and growing like this, then it's like that 20% is holding everybody else back. And it's making everyone else feel resentful to a degree. And so that's why competitive greatness was so important to me, compounded with the fact that this company was truly built off of desire and no fear. So Gym Launch, we started building it and, it was more of like, how do we not be poor? And then it was like, okay, I'm learning about culture and values and mission. And I built all those things out. And I do think I did a great job given the amount of experience I had. But I knew that the core essence of why the company existed would always be its downfall. Versus this one was purely built of like, I want to create this thing that can impact hundreds of, millions, hundreds of millions of people, hopefully one day, thousands and thousands of businesses and communities. And the vision was so expansive. There was no fear. It wasn't like, oh, I need money. Oh, I need to prove myself. It was just like, what do I want to do with the next 2 decades of my life? What could I commit to? And I thought to myself, well, I can't have somebody on the team who just clocks in and clocks out. Like I need people who want to put discretionary effort in, right? Yeah. And so that was the second piece that added to that, which that was why competitive greatness was so important. And then when I thought about the last one, it was, okay, well, how do we create speed? Because I think clarity creates speed, right? And then speed creates momentum. Momentum creates success. And you want momentum. And I think momentum in a company, once you have it, it's like you just need to keep doubling down on it because I don't think people understand how hard it is to create that. And so anything that creates friction in that momentum is a threat to the company. And I think the biggest threat to speed is lack of clarity through unclear communication, which is typically people not being sincerely candorous. Does that mean mean or punishing? No. It means clear with communication and direction. In my last company, we had don't sugarcoat it, but then that kind of turned into people being like rude sometimes. Like they were like harsh in their delivery, where I feel that sincere candor has a more soft tonality to it. And so I think that everyone in this company has done a really great job of understanding the difference between, insulting somebody versus criticizing somebody and pointing out what you want someone to do instead versus what you stop doing. And I think a lot of that ties to sincere candor. And so, really it was sitting down in a room for a whole day, thinking through these three, putting them up against other quote values and thinking like, what are the three most important things that if this person had these things and nothing else, we could build upon those skills. And that's how I came up with them.
Like, how long did it take you to actually distill? Because you sat in a room for a day. Did it take you a day, or was it literally like?
It was an 8-hour day.
No shit.
Yeah, it was just me, Alex, and at the time our CFO who retired.
Oh wow, how much carryover was there from Gym Launch in terms of value? Like, has anything been added or removed, or was Gym Launch the same? It was the 3.
No, they have 6 values, and so I actually think that a lot of the values that company has, we actually still have as like phrases that people may know us by. Do the boring work, that was a value at Gym Launch. Speed is king, that was a value at Gym Launch. But I thought to myself, what things am I able to train? And what are the most important things? And also, what chunks under these other things? And so I feel like these ones are much better I think that they're more clear. I think that they resonate. And I also think that they speak to the type of person I'm trying to hire. And Gym Launch, the type of people I'm trying to hire, were more attracted to values set in a way like that. Here, the people I'm trying to hire are more attracted to values set in this way, with this type of language. I mean, if you say like unimpeachable character, sincere candor, competitive greatness, what's the feel that you have? You usually think like it feels more elegant, luxurious, maybe expensive, maybe professional or upscale, versus grow or die, don't sugarcoat it, do the boring work, feels like more blue collar, just get the shit done, less eloquent. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's almost like the essence of them are different. And that's because I've changed. You know, I'm not the same. Alex is not the same. Alex still wears a wife beater and shorts. So actually, I don't know. But as a person, I think that my skill and ability to communicate and how I represent myself have changed. And so it felt like the way that we represented those values and the way that we packaged them needed to change as well.
So many questions.
Yes, I was so long-winded.
No, I love it. Why necessarily 3? Because for me, it feels like it's a lot of like checks and balances. Is that something that you thought about? Or is just through the iteration of removing, you kind of distilled it? Like, why not 4? Why not 5?
I can always remember 3. So when I'm in an interview process, I can mentally ask myself that this person has these 3 things. When I'm talking to people, I can always say 3. When I'm making a decision, it's easy to go through 3. And I'll say this, I think it's easy to have 10. It's hard to distill it down to 3. That was actually the hardest part. We had like 7 or 8. But it's like, how do we chunk these down into terms that these 3 encompass all the rest? Right? Like sincerely, I don't need to say honesty because that fits into sincere candor. I don't need to say hard work, that's into competitive greatness. I don't need to say kind or humility because that goes into unimpeachable character. I often tell people, I'm like, you need to chunk up your values because one, what happens is a lot of people just have a ton, which then means you have none. It's like, if everything's a rule, you have like no rules because nobody gives a shit, right? Yeah. And I also think that you need to make it simple for people. You know, I'll give you an example. Like I was writing house rules for my, administrative team that goes into my home. There's a lot of new people. And so it's like, all right, what are the rules? And it's like, we have this, and they're like, well, what about this? And I was just like, no, 5 at most. I only want 5 things that you have to think about. So what 5 encompass, like, as long as you adhere to these 5, I'm not going to be upset and you're going to be fine. And I think that a lot of people and a lot of companies are run with like more is better, but I actually think less is better because less is easier to remember and less feels lighter to the people that you're communicating it to. I think it's easy to have like 15. I mean, think about how many companies are like, these are our values and then these are our principles. I'm like, do you even know the difference? You know what I mean? Like actually, like I'm like, what's the difference? And then they're like, malfunctioning.
I kind of want to lean into that direction where you said you changed as a person, so all your values changed, which changed the type of company you want to run. One thing I've been like highly impressed with just observing you is like that ability to see where you need to go and bridging that gap. Is there like can you elaborate on that? Because I think a lot of people struggle with, they hit their ceiling of where they're at, they see where they need to go, but they don't see the ladder on how to build it to get to that next level.
I think it just takes practice.
What kind of practice?
Well, actually, I think it's the ability to think critically. Because the reason that I think I'm able to fill the gap is because something that I probably wasn't able to do 7 or 8 years ago was break something so big down into steps and then really test out each step and think to myself, what's the likelihood of success of that? Because a long time ago, me and Alex would have been like, oh, ignorance. Yeah, we're definitely going to be able to do that. Where now I think that I have an accurate depiction of how hard something is. Does that mean I'm going to not do it? No, but it means that I know it might take 5 years rather than a month.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to need this many people rather than 1. So I actually think that part comes from experience, which is just probably just being in the field, being in business for a decent amount of time. It's like you see, most things are harder and take longer than you think, but everything is possible. And so it's really just like, what would it take? And I think I always think that to myself, which is like, okay, well, what would it take if we had to do this? And taking something that's 3 years out and sitting on my computer with spreadsheets and saying, if we want that in 3 years, what has to happen in 2 years, 1 year, and then in the next 3 months, which is math. I mean, really, it's like, okay, well, if I want to by then have this many portfolio companies, I want Alex to have launched this many books, and I want to have this many workshops running. How many people do I need for each one of these things based on what I have current day today, right? And then let's add buffer of like 10 or 15%. So then I predict how many teammates I'm going to need in 3 years. And then I backtrack to what I would need in this year to accomplish, getting a third of the way to that goal. And then based on that, I can say, okay, well, if we have this many people, we can hit these metrics in terms of revenue and profit.
Yeah.
And it's not like easy, but you can do it. And I think it's just one of those things that a lot of people don't take the time to do. They have this huge dream. So everyone does, you know what I mean? But it's how do you put a plan together to achieve it? And I think at the end of the day, I didn't do that work many years ago with other companies. And I think part of it was, one, I did not have a big enough vision to even reverse back from. I knew a year out, I didn't have like a 10-year out vision. But the second piece is, even a year out, it was so tough for me to be like, well, how many people am I going to need for this or that or that?
Right.
And I think that I have just learned to, one, trust myself more, and two, do my research. If I don't know, it's not that hard to try and figure it out. People are like, I don't know how many people I'm going to need on an engineering team. I'm like, ask ChatGPT. Fuck. I mean, like, there's so many resources now that you can use to figure out what size companies need what size teams, what size of a team can produce certain outcomes. I mean, you just research. I mean, it's like Google. I know it sounds ridiculous. It's like the amount I use Google or ChatGPT or like all the tools out there. I use them just as much as anybody else. Yeah. If I don't know, I'll read a book, I'll ask somebody, I'll call somebody. And so at the end of the day, I think that most people just don't take those couple days. I clear my calendar every quarter to sit down and check all my projections. And I just don't think a lot of people do that. And I think that's why they don't grow, because if you have clear metrics you need to hit, it's actually not as hard to hit them. It's really not, because you're like, wow, that breaks down to X amount per day or X amount per month. And you're like, that's not that hard.
Yeah.
But if it's like, you need to have a $100 million business in 2 years and you have no metrics to hit each month, it makes it very difficult. So it's like that amount of work you put up front pays off dividends later on, because you have to do much less work along the way, because you're not guessing.
To play on that note, I just want to know for myself, like you said, prior you had like a year out, and kind of the goal was don't be fucking broke.
Yeah. Now,
just so I know, like, what is the 10-year? Because I know the monetary thing. It's like, you want to hit that billion mark, that's gonna happen. But like, aside from that, what is like Layla of the future? What is she? Where we're trying to go?
I want to create a campus for acquisition.com, and I want to have different buildings for different levels of businesses, purposes, etc. And I want the portfolio of companies that we have to, at that point, that will be worth tens of billions by then. I know that sounds ridiculous, but like, it's not, based on where we're at right now. I believe that if we acquire businesses that are complementary as well to the workshops we're running, they can also feed each other in a way. If I, for example, if I buy the company that does my life insurance, right, or my whole life, whatever, which I use as a business owner, I can then promote it to everyone at our workshops and say, like, you can also use the same company I use and I've trusted for the last 5 years, right? And that feels like really good to me. People always ask me for help. What do you use for this? What do you use for that? I'd rather own the businesses, so I can control their quality, I can control their customer service, and I can control my reputation when I refer somebody, and I can help them grow. So that's the first thing. The second piece is that I think probably by 10 years out that we will expand past business into personal development, which is something that Alex and I both want to do. Not because we want to do it, but because I think that it's why we've been able to be successful in business. And it's not personal development, I would say, in the way that many would think it is, but it's teaching people the language of behavior that we use to build the culture and build the companies like we do now. And I think that that's just something so useful that it's changed my life. It's changed his life. It's why I think I'm able to build the culture this way. And so I hope that if acquisition.com hits its goals in the next 5 years, people will all say, how did you do it? And then I will say, this is how. For now, I think there's no reason to listen, but
That was one of the main reasons I started listening to you before I even was interested in being part of this culture. It was the fact that there was such an emphasis on personal development, because the more you flesh yourself out as a person, the less you have to worry about the nitty gritty small stuff on how to, let it out. So I kind of want to segue into that, if you don't mind. What were some of your, I know Tony Robbins is like one of the ones that like you go to, but like, is there any other philosophies or like schools of thought that you kind of, because I know Alex is very much into Stoicism. I want to know about you.
Yeah. Oh, I've studied Stoicism as well. But I have he's studied more philosophers and I've studied more psychologists.
That's amazing.
I've read like some of the oldest psychology books that exist, just because for me, I feel like right now people write books to make money, for the most part, or get famous. But people back then didn't write books for those reasons. And so like a true textbook on how to manage stress or anxiety written by the sources themselves, who everybody else nowadays just bases everything on. Like there's nothing that has been more helpful to me than reading those things. So like Albert Ellis is one that I reference a lot because I think he has many books that have been also updated for nowadays. And his stuff is just, it's really top notch. And so I've just studied a lot of psychology because I think, gosh, I can't remember who it was. It was someone I was listening to when I was first starting the business. And they said like, the best CEOs understand psychology better than everybody else. And so I thought to myself, that makes a lot of sense because I know it's helped me with sales. It's helped me with, making friends and things like that. I was like, then I would imagine the more you deal with people, that makes sense to me. The person who has the most exposure to the most people in the company, if they don't understand that, if they don't know how to manage their own, how are they going to manage other people's? And so that always resonated really deeply with me. And I think that for both myself and Alex, it's this bridging of, I would say, probably like philosophy with psychology that has allowed us to communicate in a way that can help people change their behavior in a way that helps them achieve their goals. And that's been helpful for both of us and for the company.
Like one mantra that I've been hearing and seeing is fuck your mood, follow the plan. Which, like, how do you manage that disassociation, or that like removing yourself from your emotions and not necessarily acting on? Because that's one thing that's like, I think it's so unique to you and you've perfected in such a way. So I want to see if there's tidbits or hints you can give out on how to actually achieve that, because that's hard.
Yeah. What's interesting is like, I don't see it as removing the emotion. I see it as allowing it and not fighting it. And for me, every like amount of growth I've had to go through when it comes to like confronting something that I'm really fearful of, which is quite often in some way, right? Yeah. And most things, fear is just made up in our heads. It's not like there's some external crazy thing. Yeah. It's always been, at first, the response is you want to fight it, right? It's like you want to do something about it. You want to change the situation. You want to avoid it. You want to run. And I think I catch myself sooner and sooner and sooner as I've grown more and more. But like, it's just catching yourself and saying like, no. You just lean into it. Like you just allow it. It can live in you and you can still do what you need to do. And I almost get excited when I remember that, because it's like I have all this stress over like I need to change all these things to like control this situation I'm scared of. And then I'm like, wait, no, you could just keep the fear inside of you and let it sit there. And you can also still do that thing. In doing that, the next time you do it, you'll probably feel less scared. And so for me, it's always like reminding myself I have to accept it and almost befriend it and not judge myself for having the thoughts or having the feelings. And when they come up and when I feel like that spike of cortisol, not stressing over my stress, but instead telling myself this is completely normal, this is expected, this is a good thing, because it means that you're doing something challenging. Just because you feel this way doesn't mean you can do it. And then I usually remind myself, okay, well, you have extra energy right now. That's how I look at it. It's like I'm scared or nervous, whatever. I have extra energy. What can you do with that? You could put it into a project. You could work more. You could do this thing. You could move this other thing forward. And so I try to use it rather than let it use me. And that has been probably the most useful lesson I've had to learn in my lifetime. And I feel like I have to learn it times over and over. It's fear. It's all one, right? Wherever it decides to manifest that day or that week or that month, it's always something different, but it's all fundamentally the same thing, which is made up in our heads. And so that's been the fundamental thing that's helped me. And I think I've tried to help other people step into that same mindset, because it's just freed me from a lot of things that would have kept me pretty unhappy.
When you say fear, because for me personally, of course, I get fearful. One of the main two things that I've experienced is fear of failure. It's huge, but also in a weird way, fear of success. Mm-hmm. Have you ever experienced something like that?
I heard someone once say that we don't have fear of success, we have fear of sacrifice to get the success. What's the price of success? And that's often what we're scared of, is like, what will I become? Will I lose this about myself? Will my family look at me this way? Will I have friends like I do now? And I've recognized that I have had, rightfully so, the fear of the price of success before, and I still do, and actively, many times. I mean, right now, my life has changed a lot in the last year, even in just terms of like, I don't have a lot of, like, my privacy has gone from 4 years ago, my whole life was private and I didn't have people around much at all, to like, I have very little privacy. And so it's like, what's the price of success? It's like, privacy is a luxury now. And so that is something that I was scared of. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to even go on social media simply because of that alone. I was like, I really like that in a way, right?
100%.
But then I was like, well, do you really want to help people? Most people that really help people know who they are. And you can't really help people and get your message out unless you're public. And so, do you really want to help people, or are you being selfish? And I was like, yeah, I guess I'm being selfish. So I stopped.
I actually want to hit on that, the like coming into the public eye. One thing I did notice, because prior I didn't know you, I was on the outside, and coming in, it's so refreshing that you're actually the same person.
That would be awkward.
And I think the super cool thing is that this is not even your main thing. The main thing is running the company, growing, and getting to that point where you say you want the campus that's able to help everybody, and like the whole grand vision. The separation between that. Is there a separation between the media actually working on that arm of us seeing your life? You could just be behind closed doors and you come out, do some educational stuff, whatever, but then go back in. Like, why the focus on that?
Like, why do both?
Yeah, like, why do both?
I tell my team this, which is, we will demonstrate excellence before we teach it. And so when I think about making content, I think about the amount of people that exist that tell people what to do without doing it themselves. And I've never wanted to be one of those people. And so I'll be honest, having somebody follow me as much as I love them with a camera all day, or even just like in my space, is not something I like or like prefer having. Like, if you could have the preference, and why is that? Because you basically have this subconscious thing running of like, I'm being watched.
Yeah.
Right? But if I want to help people, I think I have a higher likelihood of helping people if they actually see how I operate in my company, the people in my company. They watch the culture. They can see it. They don't just hear me teaching these lessons at them. That's what I wish that I would have had when I was watching business content, because one, I think I would have been able to decipher from the people that I should or shouldn't listen to. Because I know that if I had watched half of these people with their teams, I would have just never watched their shit in the first place, because they were not how they came off. And I would say the second piece of that is sustainability, which is, I'm not a full-time content creator. So if I want to have a large channel, I don't think that I could get out the volume by just doing direct to camera, pre-scripted film, all of that alone. I think it has to be more, I call it like in the wild content, like where it's being captured as I'm doing things. So I think it has multiple benefits. It's like, you show, you don't tell. People can see what it's really like. They can see that I'm not perfect, that my team's not perfect. They can see mess ups. They can see what it really is like to do these things rather than just watch a video, right? And it's like a kid. It's like you can tell them not to touch the stove until they watch you cook something and not touch the stove. They're probably going to touch it. I would say the second piece is sustainability, which is like, I think that making content, in my opinion, if you make it in a way that's unsustainable, then you're going to burn out at some point because you're going to want to stop because it requires more of your energy than you're going to have at many other times. And so I looked at it as like building a team and investing in like more captured content and in the wild and vlog style allows me to keep doing what I really love doing and still make content. And then I would say the last piece is something that someone said to me when I first started making content, and none of my content was like captured all, it was all just like direct to camera. And she said, everyone who's closer to you likes you more than the people on the internet. And I was like, well, what does that mean? She was like, I know, it sounds bad. She's like, who you are in like that setting, she's like, people like less than who you are in like literally any other setting.
Yeah.
And she was like, I think that you should do captured content because people who know you better like you more. And she's like, most people aren't like that, and I was just like, I don't lie. I'm honest. I'm transparent. I don't have anything I want to hide. So like, why not? Like I think a lot of people are the opposite of that. But I feel like those three reasons are why we make the content the way we do. I would say that making content is still one of the more uncomfortable things for me. Just like being in front of a camera, it's not like organic still. But he's like, we're like 3.5 years in, and I still feel that way. But it's probably just like reps. You know what I mean? Like,
and it means you care.
I care, yeah. And I think how many meetings have I run and one-on-ones have I done versus how many recording sessions? Like it's still like monumentous more amount of one-on-ones and meetings than recording sessions. So it's like, it's just volume.
By the way, I know you don't want to boost yourself, but I think you absolutely thrive in the capture in the wild because it's so hard for people to fathom that you're like actually like this.
Yeah.
And like capturing you in the wild is like, no, straight up, this is how it is. And the vulnerability that you put out there, I think even yesterday, like during the L2, we were capturing testimonials. One of the girls, she was there and she just started talking. And she was like, one of the things I experienced that it is okay to be scared. It is okay to feel shitty is like, oh, you made her feel okay. And she mentioned you so many times. Oh. And it was so like real because whoever I showed your content to, it was the same reaction. And I think you just allowing people to be human, so monumental to like kind of the success that I've seen.
It's funny because we never know, like it's hard to know what causes, like I can look at any business and be like, this is the success.
Yeah.
But when you look at yourself, you only see the flaws magnified rather than like the things that are contributing to the success. So yeah. And I think that's actually probably been the most uncomfortable thing for me with content is like, even to be like my content team, my creative director, like I'm so important. I've got my style. Like, it's like, cause I, my whole life have just put myself last and not wanted to talk about myself. So it's like talking about myself was probably the first thing that was so uncomfortable when I started making content. Was just like, wow, I think I know so much. I'm going to make some, like that was all what was playing in my head. And so I still catch myself time to time feeling that way,
But I think the way you put it out there is not like you don't do it boastfully. It's very matter of fact.
Yeah.
And it takes people a little while because the entire internet is like, what is your ulterior motive? Why the fuck are you doing all this? And like, there is none, which is kind of surreal.
I think most people are just scared,
Back to the fear thing,
Yeah, because like I know plenty of people who make content and I don't think that they're malicious. I don't think that they have bad intent, but when I look at the difference between them and me, like these are people I would even say I would be close to. I just am like, they're still scared to be themselves, and so the version of themselves that's on the internet is still not as dynamic and interesting and authentic as the person that you meet in person. And so I think that's always been my goal, is to bridge that gap,
To do what?
Bridge that gap. Because I've just observed like what I don't like about content. It's just that when you can tell when there's like something's off when you watch their content. And it's like, what's off is they're probably just spending all this energy trying to be the version of themselves they think the internet wants to see, you know? It's like, well, if people hate you either way, they might as well hate you for who you are, and you don't have to expend all that energy trying to fake it.
100%. I feel like that's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's exhausting. I tried it in the beginning.
Really?
Yeah, in the beginning, because I was so nervous. I was like,
I'd seen you direct to camera, and I think it was very much like, Alex been doing this and it fucking works, let me do it.
yeah,
Was
exactly.
that, yeah?
Yes. And I'm like, I'm busy. So, like, whatever. I'll just copy what you're doing. And I think at the time when I first started, I was so nervous that I was like, everyone's just going to be like, oh, because Alex has been making content for so long. So people, perception is reality. They see the businesses that we have and they say these are his businesses, right? This is what he's done. He runs the business. And it's like, so then I was nervous. I was like, I don't want to share the same stories. I don't want to talk about the same topics. I don't want to. And honestly, I'm so grateful for him because he's like, go out there and fucking own it. He was like, tell them that I wasn't even fucking in that situation. Tell them that you did all of this. He's like, I don't give a shit. He's like, you know what you've done and you need to take more credit. And so he's always been really great about that because, you know, he makes a joke. He's like, you know, Layla runs the company. I take the credit. But he always tries to give the credit, you know, and I think that's helped me a ton because he has a lot of confidence, and I've always struggled with confidence.
Really?
But it's really helpful to be married to somebody who's constantly encouraging you, like, take more credit, talk about the things you've done, you know, edify yourself, and that's something I don't do as well as he does. And so I've definitely gotten to learn from him, which is great.
Do you know why?
But why I don't?
Yeah.
Upbringing.
Oh, okay.
I mean, neither of my parents are like that. You know, both very, I wouldn't say like confident. I mean, if you look at his dad versus my dad, like you would even see in that discrepancy. His dad's very confident. My dad's like humble, like the sweetest, kindest, like just wants others to feel great. So I think you do pick up a lot from your parents, for one, because that was like my model, was how my father was. I also think my father's like a great person. And then I would say it was more reinforced when we started the company and I realized that me putting others on a pedestal built a great culture. And so for me, I've always looked at it like great leaders put others, like they take the blame and then they give the credit away to people on their team. I don't take credit for what anyone else does. I give the credit to Alex. I give the credit to my team. I give the credit to luck. It's like I never want to take the credit. And I do believe that that's because it's just been ingrained in me from when I was younger. And I do think that that is an element of, like, I want to be a great leader. And I think that great leaders do that.
Can I ask you, like, because you said you want to be a leader. And from what I've seen, like the story of your first job where you're at Subway and like you did tons of shit to like get in there, although you couldn't actually work. Like, where'd that drive come from to you actually wanting to be that? Because it feels like that was very young and very early. And if your dad was like such a humble being, like, where'd you pick up that drive to actually want to do it? Because it takes a lot of energy what you're doing. It's not like, hey, let me just casually do this. Like, this is deliberate and like for years.
Well, I think there's a few things, which is, one, I've always wanted to help people. You know, since I was young. It was just like, no matter what I do in life, I want to help people. Whether it was like, I want to be a veterinarian and help pets. I want to be a doctor and help people. I want to be, you know, I thought about like comedy. I was like, I want to make people laugh. Like, I just always wanted to make people feel good. And no, I was really young. And that's something that's very potent in my family. Like my dad's side of the family, like my cousins. When I'm with them, I feel like we share so much of each other because they're the same way. It's like they just they're so kind. It's like, I can't even, just so kind and want to empower others and encouraging of others. And for me, that's just a standard of like, if I lived my life, right? If you look at like, what do I want to have happen at the end of my life when I look back, I want to be known for that. I want people to be like, she encouraged me. I got to borrow belief from her. And because of that, I achieved my dreams because she believed in me. That's just been something I've wanted for a very long time. I don't know why. Yeah. And then now I'm in a place where I recognize that because of my experience and accomplishments, I can be that person by saying 2 sentences to somebody. That feels like a heavy responsibility in some regards, meaning like I want to use it. I want to, if people look to me and think like, if she just gave me one compliment, says, you're doing a great job, like keep doing this. Like if that can change somebody's life trajectory because suddenly they're like, if she believes in me, then I believe in myself. Like, why would you not want to use that to help others? You know what I mean? And so it's like, I wake up every day and think like, okay, I have that ability with a lot of people on this team. I have that ability with a lot of people that we interact with on a daily basis. I think a lot of it ties back to probably what you think the purpose of life is. But for me, the purpose of my life is to make other people's lives better. And I don't find a lot of joy in just trying to make mine better. Because, I remember, for example, I was doing fitness competitions and I thought that me doing a competition would inspire other people and do all this stuff. And then I remember getting to the day and I got like second place. And I just remember thinking, my thought was just like, this is so selfish. Like you spend all this time in the gym on yourself and then you eat all this food and weighing your food and doing all this stuff. And like, you could be spending your time helping other people do something. And I remember I just didn't like it. I was like, this just isn't for me. Like, I just don't think this is the best use of me. And I think for other people, maybe that is the right vehicle. It felt very self-centered. And I've just found that nothing motivates me more. Okay, so maybe it is selfish to overcome my own fears, to overcome all my own doubts and all my uncertainties, unless it's others. It's like when I know that I'm doing something for the greater good of other people, I will overcome the greatest fears, for people I love, for community, for helping people. It is very feasible to overcome the fears you have when you have a dream and a goal that's so much bigger than that. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of that for me has just been related to people. I don't really know if I answered the question, but
no, you didn't.
There's something there.
I truly resonate with like the family aspect.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if it's a cultural thing or like because my dad's the same. It's like he's so self-sacrificial in a way to where he wanted to help people that we were confused. We're like, they're not, like, we're your children. Why aren't you caring for us more than them?
Yeah.
And his saying was, those are my children too. If I don't do it, who will? I saw one of your posts where you, I don't know if it was your dad's birthday or what, but like you kind of wrote out the things that you learned from him.
Yeah.
And it literally made me tear up, like when I was seeing that, because it connected so hard.
Yeah.
With, I don't know if it's like such a foundational thing. Can this be taught?
Yeah.
Like, because we don't choose our parents,
Right.
The first, whatever, 18 years or however long you're supposed to be with them, you're at their mercy of their environment and whatever influence comes. If you're lucky enough to be in that position to have someone be growth and like be self-sacrificial in that, you're lucky. But if not, you need to spend a good 10 years undoing all the psychological damage you got from your family.
Yeah. I don't know either. I studied a lot about nature versus nurture, just trying to understand, but nobody really knows. We just know that both affect us.
And like how actionable is this stuff,
Right, like what am I going to do about it?
Yeah.
I just focus on the nurture piece because I can't do anything about the whatever biology,
Yeah. Do you spend a lot of time like reframing stuff?
I think I reframe things all the time, yeah, for myself or for others, because I think life is 50-50, right? At least that's how I think it. It's like 50% good, 50% bad. And
wait, what do you mean by that?
I think it's just, for example, if you solve a problem in your business, what happens? You create a new problem. So with every good thing in life comes a new set of problems. And so you're just trading out or up the 50% good for another different 50% bad.
Oh, I see.
At least that's how I see life. I think I'm constantly trying to reframe things that could be seen as bad for opportunities to overcome or confront things that I haven't yet, and I think I try to do that every day. I put a lot of pressure on myself. So if I don't reframe things, I can get caught up in it and I can believe the way that my brain first presents a situation to me, right? Which usually the way it first presents it to me is like this big scary thing that you should try and avoid. And I have to reframe it into something that I can use. Okay, great, this is a tool, right? Fear is a tool. And it's pointing me in the direction of a skill I need to acquire, which often is just like to be more courageous. Every time a situation comes up and I feel very nervous immediately, I'm like, okay, step back, give yourself time. All right, we're not going to run. We're not going to try and eliminate the situation. If you go through the situation. What's the worst that could happen? And I walk myself through that. And then I'm like, okay, would you die? No. All right. So you'll just get better. And that's usually what happens. I'm like, you'll just get better. And so I've just found that to be very useful for me. And then I'm like, all right, well, I can be kind of excited about this because I'm going to be way cool. I'm going to be way tougher on the other side. You know, and I think something that I've always wanted to associate myself with is just tough. Like, I want to be tough. I think the things I want to achieve in life, like, you can't not be, you know, because I think it's a lot. That reframe has helped me the most, which is just always looking at fear or the unknown or something bad as an opportunity. You know, even COVID, when COVID hit our business, everyone was like, we're fucked. And they're like, you guys are so super fucked because all your businesses are in person, right? And that's true. Gyms are in person. Our supplements were sourced in person.
Wow.
Our software was for in-person appointments. And so everything that was all growing, and it was like the best month we were ever having. And then COVID hit. And it was just like, and
it like started to slow down completely.
Yeah, not completely, because I said, all right. Like, I say I want to be in business and I want to be one of the best leaders that exists. This is where you get tested. You don't get tested when times are easy. You get tested when shit's hard. And so I was like, all right, well, how do I use this as an opportunity to, like, if I were the best in class, if I were the best leader ever, how would I handle this situation? And I think to all the books I've read of, like, Phil Knight and like Ben Horowitz and Phil Graham and like all these people who are amazing leaders and CEOs. And I was like, how would they handle it? What did they do in the darkest hours? And I'm like, all right, I want to emulate that, you know? And so that was like the best thing that could have ever happened to me as a leader. I learned how to turn around a company. I learned how to pivot a product on a dime. I learned how to rally a culture when things were shit. Super useful. I learned how to deal with layoffs. Like, I learned so much. And I think that what was cool is, like, I kept a pretty good attitude the whole time. I was exhausted, you know, and it was really hard working like very long hours. But I look back and I feel proud of how I showed up. And I feel like I got better from those situations, not worse. And I think that's the fundamental difference, is like people who can reframe bad situations or the 50% life that's negative. That means that 100% of life is opportunity rather than just 50. Because a lot of people, they see the good part as like, that's my 50% opportunity. Whereas, like, I think people who really win, they see the 50% negative and the 50% positive, and they're like, I have 100% opportunity here. There's opportunity in the good and there's opportunity in the bad. It's just a matter of how you use it.
Yeah, how'd you manage that layoff, both emotionally and tactically?
It's been a tough week because I've had some situations where I had to make some hard decisions. Jesus Christ. I've had to learn to forgive myself for a lot of those things because, you know, one of the hardest things to do is make decisions that you know are right, that make someone's life worse, but they make 100 people's lives better. And so, you know, doing a layoff, I felt terrible, but I knew it was the right decision. And so I did it anyways. And I think that, to be honest, it took me a while to bounce back from, you know, because I judged myself a lot for it. Like, could you have prevented it? Could you have done things better? And I'm emotional now because I have situations I'm dealing with this week where, you know, people are asking me, there's people situations, and I ask myself, could I have done anything better? And I can see where I could have, and I still have to make hard decisions. And it sucks. And I think that's why a lot of people don't do this, because they say it got too stressful. You know, it led me to be too distracted at home. I wasn't there for my kids. I was all these things. And it's because they don't forgive themselves. I can feel sad and I can feel upset, but I will forgive myself because I know at the end of the day that I'm doing what's right for this company and I'm doing what's right for these people. And I also know that making hard decisions is my job. And when I see a lot of people who end up quitting or they always say, I gotta hire an operator or a CEO, you know, and I'm like, why? Like, it's because it's painful. You know, people ask me all the time, my friends, they're like, you're a psycho. You don't need to be the CEO. Like, why? And I'm like, well, one, founder-led companies have like a million times more success. Two, I love it. I don't love every part. I don't love when I had to do a layoff. I don't love when I have to fire people who are good people who just maybe weren't the right fit for the company. But I think I've just had to learn to forgive myself for those things, because I would say this, the hardest decisions to make are the ones where you sacrifice a few people for the many. And because those few tell you you're a piece of shit, you're a terrible leader, you're not who people say you are. They speak all those things against you. And I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I think this is why I'm emotional. And I was thinking about all the times that's happened to me, where I've had to, for example, I had to let a group of 3 people go in my last company because I found out they were siphoning customers. And then their friends in the company, who obviously I'm not going to tell what happened, right? They find out, and then they're like, you're a piece of shit. You're like nothing that you say you are. You're all these. And I was just like, and it feels terrible because it comes from people that you're like, wow, I felt like you were like part of this family, You just have to grow thick skin, because it only continues to happen more and more as companies get bigger. That's why I love talking about feeling misunderstood, because I feel like it hasn't happened as much here yet because we haven't been big enough. But like, it will happen and it will come. Might be people on this team, and they're gonna be like, the fuck, she's evil. She's actually like this instead, because I won't be able to say the whole situation, and something will happen, and perception is reality. And then people who have been rooting for you for 3 or 4 years and been like your biggest fans turn on you because of perception. And I will never break confidentiality. I will never humiliate somebody else. I will never talk shit about somebody or something they did. And so I will have to bear that. And I'll have to deal with the fact that they think something negative about me. I'm in multiple situations right now where I could easily get, this person to completely understand my point of view if I disclosed something about this other person that they did that was pretty fucked up, right? But instead, I maintain confidentiality because this person told me something, and I'm like, all right, think what you want of me.
Specifically on that note, do you say that there's something that you can't share, or is it like not at all?
I'm not gonna say anything. I think at times I've said, like, I'll say, like, out of respect for this person, I just want you to understand, like, I can't say anything.
Because I feel like that context does help to have
Of
someone
course it
understand.
helps, but it also violates, in my opinion, like, one of my duties is to maintain confidentiality, which is like, if somebody tells me something in confidence, I keep it to myself. And I don't think that people could come to me and talk to me if they felt like I was going to go tell everybody, even if it was to my advantage. And so, I think in those situations, what I've just learned is I just can't carry that burden for longer than a day or two. Like, I got emotional because, like, this is something from like today and yesterday. And that question reminded me of it, but like, I'll be fine on Monday. And seriously,
that's cool as fuck.
Because like, it's not fair to my team. What am I going to show up crying on a meeting? You know what I mean? It's like, goodness gracious, I have to forgive myself for everybody else who doesn't misinterpret the situation. Otherwise, I'm not my best for them. And so I think what has helped me a lot is just realizing that beating myself up, how you show up for your team sets the tone for everything in the entire company. And so showing up well and being your best self is very important. And I've realized that when I beat myself up, I'm not that. I'm not a strong, dependable leader for my team if I'm beating myself up, literally turning myself into a victim of my own mind. And I think a lot of people just sit there and dwell and rehash the situation. It's like, yes, I fucked up. I got to move on, though. I'm going to fuck up again. Got to get on to the next one,
No, it's totally true. And you have such a good way of separating your observing mind from sort of the monkey brain, like the stream of thought that comes and goes, that makes you feel bad and makes you feel guilty and all that. That separation of like being the observer of that mind.
Yeah.
How long did it like take you to actually create that separation? Because I think that's a huge part on what creates the success that you have and makes you a great leader, is because you say, hey, I don't feel any different than anybody else, but I have developed the skill to be able to separate myself. So if, for whoever is listening, even people in this team, I think this is something that if everybody learned this skill, it would elevate.
I think the first thing that you do is you delay. Rather than stopping a response to that like chaotic brain, you delay it. all right, I'm not going to respond now. I'll respond to that thought in 3 hours.
Do you put like
Seriously.
a timer, or like
You
are you just
could.
mental? Like, hey, I'm not gonna.
Either, whatever works.
Cool.
Because even for me, I can be very scared of something at 9 a.m. and at 12 p.m. Once I've gone through my meetings and eaten lunch, it might not seem scary at all.
Oh.
Time. And here's the thing, feelings pass whether we do anything about them or not. And I've learned that. And so just try it, just delay your response to the feeling. That's the first step. And then what you'll realize is that whether you like it or not, it'll go in and out of your brain, and then less and less and less. And then you'll feel less attached to the thought or the feeling when it comes back. And you'll be able to look at it with a more objective state of mind. And so that's the first thing that I give to people as advice is like, just delay. You don't need to not respond, but delay it. You say you want to cancel this speaking thing or do it. Why don't you tell me in 3 hours? That's the first thing that I would say for people is just delay, just put some buffer time, and then tell me how you feel in 3 hours.
That's highly actionable because that's super easy to do. It's like not doing something is the doing. What do you have for me? Like real talk, do you have anything for me that I can like advise, sum to up, especially in the position that I'm in? Because I think it is a unique position that I've been hired for.
Yeah.
To where I'm hired into an already existing team, but also there is leadership above me.
Yeah.
Because I think it is a unique position that I've been hired for.
Yeah.
To where I'm hired into an already existing team, but also there is leadership above me.
Yeah.
So any advice that you can give me, because I remember in our first like interview, I talked about like kind of the process I want to do is first assimilate, like become part of the family, and then optimize and innovate. Like aside from that, like do you have anything to help in that regard? That's my question.
Well, I think it's really hard for people in the beginning. So for example, like when somebody comes in when nothing's built yet, they can just do whatever they want right away. So it's a lot of like immediate gratification. When you come in and there's already stuff built, if you come in and try to change it immediately, you don't know who built it, but it basically, you changing it is like calling their baby ugly. And so the hardest thing, but the best thing to do is to be patient and to form the relationships first and to watch everything. And I think that the person who did it best in our company was actually Rocky, because he came in and I knew it was actually a hot fucking mess in his department. Long story. This department, not hot fucking mess. He did not want to do just 30 days, just watched everything and took notes like a motherfucker, and then presented to me upon, I think it was like day 50, his observations and his suggestions of what to do based on it. And it was very thoughtful. It was taking into consideration all the context of like who has built what, who did what, and why things were the way they were. And I thought it was just really well done. And somebody like that comes in, it's like the first thing you want to do is immediately add value. I think that I always look for quick wins, where it's like, if I were you, I'd be like, okay, where are quick wins where I can just add value without, completely redoing anything? And then you put together, but be taking notes the whole time, and then put it all together in one proposal, like, this is what I would like to do. And then that obviously would need to be change managed, just in terms of like rolling it out to a team and such. But I know that's not the answer you probably want to hear, but I think it's the right one.
I think it's kind of what I've been doing in a certain sense. And I think I'm in a lucky position too, where the team that I have is super flexible and highly receptive of new ideas.
Yeah.
None of them were like, no, this is my shit. You can't fuck. And I love that. That's 100%. Sort of the direction I want to go. Yeah.
And I think I'll say this also. It's just whenever I have things that I think I want to do differently in a department, I go to a teammate and I'll ask them a million questions before I tell them what I think we should do differently, because I want to understand why they do it the way they do right now. So I would say that's the last thing I would say is as long as you keep doing that, and just wait a few more weeks.
The waiting.
Yeah, I know. That's the hard part.
Yeah, it is.
But you're doing great.
Am I good?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. No. Really.
I just see so much
opportunity.
Exactly. I see the 50%, the 100% thing.
Start writing it down.
Yeah, no, I am. I'm working on it.
He's like
I said, I'm doing the
giant
Rocky
book already. No.
I'm doing the Rocky thing. It's I'm building it.
It's the right way to go.
Cool. Sweet. Well, I think this was Super nice. I love the conversation.
Yeah, this is cool.
You dig it?
New style. Yeah.
So good. Like you're doing so good.
You're funny. Thank you.
I mean, Layla makes it easy.
Nice.
I just like say 3 words and she's like, okay, here's 5 hours of content.
I don't know. I'm like, I hope I answered the question.